All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. Wait for the last couple folks to find a seat here. Cool. All right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for making the journey, not only from wherever you traveled from, but also the probably 5 miles you walked to find the room in this massive hotel we find ourselves in. And so welcome to my breakout session titled Automating Your Apps with Slack and Microsoft Teams. My name's Charlie Morawski. I am the Director of Technical Operations with MCF Tech, one of the QuickBase Gold partners, one of the diamond sponsors of this event. So gold, diamonds, Miami, a little bit of a bling bling scenario here. Been doing QuickBase for a long time, better part of the last decade, seen lots of apps. Have kind of an unhealthy obsession with system integrations as well. I just love solving puzzles and kind of complex scenarios. And a little pro tip there if anyone's looking for some decent Cuban food in town here. So let's go over a little bit of an agenda review. So if you were at my presentation last year, just been following the industry in general, lots changed. There's some new players and methodologies available to us, and they're becoming more popular by the day. There's also some great new tools we have available to us in terms of integrating our systems and automating things. And I hope I can really inspire you with some real-life use cases and some examples and maybe some things you can take away and implement within your own organization. So we're facing a new reality. I'm going to get us warmed up a little bit with a few really interesting statistics I pulled up. So this was from 2018 last year, and this is the average SaaS spend per employee in the year 2018 by company size down there on the x-axis. And really just focus on that segment all the way down there on the left. It was really shocking to me that even in companies as small as 0 to 50 employees, we're spending on average $1,300 a year in SaaS license subscriptions per person. And just to put that in perspective, $1,300 is the price of a brand new MacBook Pro, starting price at least. And this is another great statistic that shows the number of average SaaS tools or logins that an employee has based on company size. This one really hit me where you could pretty much draw a straight line across the top. It seems that regardless of the size of our organization, we have lots of things to log into, lots of inboxes to manage, lots of cloud tools that we're adopting. And this is really just cloud applications. This isn't counting things like email, people calling you, texting you, maybe even some legacy on-prem stuff you have, or local file storage, intranet sites, things like that. So this is really just cloud tools. So what I really want you to take away from that is SaaS or cloud tools have been really helpful. They've driven all kinds of efficiency in our processes, but they've also started to cause potentially data silos in many inboxes to manage. And really think about how many inboxes you're managing right now. Do you have one QuickBase dashboard you're going to? Maybe 2, 3, 4? Getting email notifications, you're getting IMs. Some of you may be needing to take action on things like Trello cards, Jira tickets, Microsoft Planner tasks, voicemail. So I would imagine, but show of hands, how many of you kind of find yourself in this place where you don't really have one-stop shop that's telling you what you need to do on a daily basis, myself included. So and as this infographic shows here on the top too, this trend's only going to keep going. But this is saying by next year, and I can't believe 2020 is next year. It seems like sci-fi movies were taking place in 2020 when I was growing up. But by next year, they're estimating that about 3/4 of all organizations are going to be 100% in the cloud. So this train is a-rolling. So I'm a fan of checklists, and this topic gets me really excited. So I'm going to toss this slide in here intermittently just to make sure I'm keeping myself on track. So kind of going into our first trend as I highlighted. So let's get some basic definitions out of the way. What's an integration? I'm sure a lot of you know, but just really to get it out of the way. So an integration in the classic sense is moving data from one system to another. And for a long time, we were doing that in things like batches, a nightly batch run or an hourly pull of data from one system to another. And then we have some more modern conventions available to us these days to do things like real-time or triggered types of integrations. Even QuickBase introduced the webhook feature a few years ago. That's very integral in supporting things like that. And these have been great for us for many years. They speed up our processes, one point of data entry, getting brokered to all sorts of other places, one version of the truth. And my example here is something you guys might find in some of your organizations. I've got my customers master list in QuickBooks, and I'm pushing that to my QuickBase ordering tool, let's say on an hourly basis. And maybe another, let's say, real-time integration between QuickBase and QuickBooks. When an order is made, I'm doing things like generating a purchase order and PO lines over in QuickBooks. But what about all that stuff that happens after the sale is made? You got to generate an invoice to the customer. You got to somehow receive payment from them, reflect that in your financial system. Got to generate a shipping label, send tracking information to the customer. And then not to mention all this back and forth to the warehouse in terms of what items should they pick. How do I decrement that from my inventory? How do I stage it, load it, get it scheduled for delivery? There's a lot more things in this workflow that we need a better way to manage. So we really need a new definition. So there's this new term that's been thrown around the industry the last couple of years called automation. I'm not strictly talking about QuickBase automations, but they are a very good example about how one thing happening in one system, like somebody editing a record, can in fact do multiple things after that. So I think automations are a good starter to that concept if you've used them. So this is an example of that same scenario I was just talking about in a more automated way. So as soon as an order is made, I can have a shipping label generated. As soon as that happens, I can update QuickBase with my tracking info and shoot an email out to the customer. I can generate an invoice in QuickBooks automatically and send a payment form to the customer using something like authorize.net. As soon as they pay, I can reflect that in my financial system, then send some information over to the warehouse guys in terms of here's a pick list, all kinds of things. So this is kind of taking that concept of QuickBase automation, edit a record, do this, then this, then this, then this. Automation in kind of a generic sense is really stringing together multiple integrations. One thing happening in one system kicks off a lot of other things that happen. So integration system to system, automation really system to system to system, really just an expansion of integrations that can be strung together. And these really help us to make decisions quicker, have real-time or near real-time handoffs, and really helps our data flow harmoniously throughout our organization versus being kind of tossed back and forth or waiting for something or going to have to search for something. So that was our first trend. So if we needed a new definition, certainly we need some new tools. So before I go on a bash session about email, I would be the first to admit I don't want to go back to paper inboxes or fax machines. But email's kind of become the de facto workflow tool in a lot of our organizations. And the problem with that is emails tend to queue up. The important ones get lost in the mix. How many times have you been on one of those 79 reply all emails with 16 other people and am I supposed to do something? I get about 5 of those a day. And show of hands, I mean, who wants to get more emails every day? Got one joker in the crowd. I'm watching you. So now let's talk about IM, because IM has really been starting to proliferate throughout our organizations and why that might be a better tool than IM. So a lot of us are using IM, and it's generally easier to know the who and the what and the where. The message is coming directly to you from somebody, and it's very contextual about what they want you to do or act on. And studies have shown they support this. People tend to manage their IM inbox better than email. There's something psychological of seeing that message, and then a lot of these newer tools too, you can tell when somebody's typing, and it really just, you kind of treat it more like a real conversation, whereas email is a lot more passive. And these are just some of the early players in the market that really paved the way to some of these new IM tools that are really not just an IM tool, they're looking to be the communication hub within your organization. And not really just a communication hub, but a collaboration space and workflow engine. So, and they have lots of powerful features, and they're very developer friendly and extensible. And of course, I'm talking about Slack and Microsoft Teams. That was in the title of this presentation. And these tools are really paving the way and really changing the way that we communicate and collaborate with each other. So show of hands, who uses either one of these tools, Slack, Teams? Hopefully not both. Okay, pretty much all of you. So for those not familiar, or maybe using one versus the other, there's Slack on the left, Teams on the right. And this concept of contextual conversations. So we see this Slack channel here on the left. All these conversations happening are contextual to Superfoods Corp, which is maybe our client. So you know that everything in there is about that particular client. And that seems simple, but that can have some powerful impacts. And then Teams on the right over there, we've got teams, which are divided into channels. And we've got things like contextual file attachments inline right in the conversation, things like meetings, meeting recordings, all kinds of things like that. And these tools really have endless connectivity. This is an example of a Trello board embedded in Microsoft Teams. And it takes about a minute to set this up, and it might seem kind of trivial, but the fact that you can work in one tool inside of another tool and not have to open up a browser tab and look at things side by side and lose your progress or kind of where you were, it can actually have a very powerful impact. Another example of multiple people collaborating on a Microsoft Word document in real time and giving each other comments and back and forth. Right in Microsoft Teams, didn't even need to open Word. So just key takeaway here is this can be a much better and more contextual way for people to interact with each other and their cloud tools. So now we're going to get into really this endless connectivity a little bit deeper and do a focus on bots. And Slack really paved the way here. They really led the charge. This is an example of the first bot that Slack developed. It's called SlackBot. It's their own internal utility. And this is a really simple example of me just saying, hey, SlackBot, remind me about something at this time and date. And when that time and date hits, it's going to send me an instant message saying, hey, Charlie, you asked me to remind you about that. Then they started to open up bots to the developer community. And this is an example of something called StatsBot. So this guy is basically asking StatsBot, hey, give me some SEO information about some of the websites that I manage. So in this sense, StatsBot is like a member of this guy's organization that knows everything about his systems, and he can interact with him in a very friendly conversational form. So that was our second trend. So let's bring it all together. So hopefully by combining this new form of integration with bots, we can have some pretty incredible results. So I won't claim that an easy button can automate all your processes end to end. I don't actually really think that's the point. There's always going to be a human element in our workflows, and there's always going to be these human steps. And I'm going to argue that instant messaging is probably the best way for humans to be able to interact inside of the context of an automated process. The sort of fastest and easiest way to where I might have system to system to system. Now I need a human interaction, and then system to system to system kind of thing. So let's see here. So now we're going to get into some use cases. Let's get into the really fun part. I definitely wanted to cruise through that and spend some ample time on some really cool examples. So let me just pave the way for our first use case. Might be very common to a lot of you in the room. Very good use case for QuickBase. You're managing some data in QuickBase. You need to get something approved. Let's say that's a contract or an opportunity, what have you. So in my example, I've got sales orders. They're in QuickBase. I've got a rule that basically says if the deal's over a certain amount, I need my manager to approve that. So just kind of setting the table for that. Let's kind of look at how we're doing that today, potentially. So today, usually our manager is going to get an email like this. He's going to click the approve button, and then he's probably going to get to a screen like this. And then he's probably going to get taken to a screen like this. A lot of these folks get way too many emails, and they don't log into their systems. And they have busy travel schedules. They're always in meetings, and these things just get buried in their inbox. It's just the reality of it. So now I'm going to break one of the cardinal sins of technical demos, and I'm actually going to do a live demo. So bear with me right here when I just kind of queue up my browser. So let's kind of see this in action, and then we'll look under the hood a little bit. So I've got my contract here set up, and you'll see I've got some information filled out. My deal amount's $140,000. I'm going to mark my contract to complete here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Absolutely. Sorry, yeah, that's pretty small. Good in the back? I can go a little bigger. Okay, cool. So you'll see here, basically when I saved that record, pretty much instantaneously, my QuickBase bot that I built sent me a message in Slack. And what's really cool is it gave me some information. You'll see this is the same information that I filled out on that form. And the cooler part is I've got some buttons down there. Okay, sorry. Oh yeah, Slack, different site. How's that? Good? Cool. So there's a form of information that got sent to me in the form of an instant message directly from QuickBase. Pretty awesome. But let's look at the real magic part here. I've actually sent some buttons, and these are really the power of these IM tools. Slack and Teams support not only forms of information, but commands that you can configure and serve things like buttons and drop-downs and all kinds of things to users. So I'm the manager. I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, you know, most of our deals don't usually get into the six figures. 140,000 seems like a lot. I think he made a mistake. Maybe he meant 14,000. So I'm going to reject this one this time. Another really cool thing is I can actually, again, that human ETL component, I can force the user to have to say something. I could also have just rejected that immediately, but I'm going to require some notes. I'm going to say, did you mean 14,000? This seems a little high. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that. And it says my contract's been rejected, but don't trust me. Let's go ahead and refresh the page. And we'll see here the contract's been rejected, and the notes that I posted via Slack were written to QuickBase. So let's do that again one more time. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this for the sake of speed. And let's chop a 0 off of there. And cool. OK, so we're pending director approval again. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And then what I'm going to do is, now let's pretend our manager now is sitting in a first-class seat on the tarmac over at MIA, having a nice glass of Chardonnay, waiting for his plane to take off. And he's going to get a message like this. So there we go. You guys see my mobile screen there? Sorry, and I don't think I can make that any bigger. So really the nice thing about these platforms too, I think I highlighted in one of my previous slides, is they're very platform agnostic. I built this once, works on my phone, works in the browser, works on the desktop app, Mac, Windows, Android, iOS, doesn't matter, works on every device. This time I'm going to go ahead and approve it. So plane's about to take off. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Going to go ahead and hit approve. And my contract's been approved. So I'm just going to go ahead and back out of here and get my screen share back. All right, so let's see how that works. I'm not going to go super deep, but happy to entertain some folks. We have a private room if you want to come find me or come by our booth. I can really dive deep into some of this stuff with you. But the one thing that's really cool is the process of me sending the message to Slack, that part of the workflow, I actually was able to do by myself without writing any code, just using a couple of things. So to be able to do this, you basically just need a developer account in Slack, which is free. You can just sign up with your own Slack account. You would set up an application over in Slack. They'll give you some credentials and things like that. And then you use this product of theirs, kind of newer product called their Block Kit Builder, which is like a form builder. And they basically give you some code that you can paste into a QuickBase webhook. So this is kind of what exactly what the Block Kit Builder looks like. This is really nice drag and drop form creator. Really nice drag and drop form creator here, where I can basically drag things and kind of design my form. So this should look kind of familiar, some of the elements here. And then basically what they do is they generate a JSON file that I can copy and paste directly into my QuickBase webhook. And then it's as simple as setting up my rules, just like setting up an email notification when this happens and this happens. And then I'm providing some things that Slack gave me, and I'm also mapping some of my QuickBase fields to that data. And that's really all it took to have that message sent. Can be done in a matter of minutes for a really simple use case. All right, so now we're really going to kick things up a notch. So that last example, like I said, pretty simple workflow I developed using the Slackbot SDK and the QuickBase API directly. But now I'm going to walk you through a few use cases where we're leveraging a tool like Workato and their Workbot connector can allow for basically limitless expansion of these automated workflows. So with Workbot, I can have one generic bot that can interact with all my systems. And I'm going to show you a demo of this workflow in a second. And basically what I'm doing here is Workbot basically allows us to set up commands that I can kick off from Teams or Slack. So in this use case, I'm actually going to start the workflow myself. I'm going to talk to the bot like I showed you earlier with the stats bot. I'm going to kick it off with a command. So I can set up a pre-configured command. And then I'm going to keep this in the context of QuickBase, but keep in mind Workato has about 200 other connectors. But in this simple example, I'm basically just getting records from a report in QuickBase. And then I'm using a repeat action to post a message as a response to my command for every opportunity that I find. This is a use case. I should back up a little bit. I'm a salesperson. This is my CRM, and I'm basically asking my bot, let me see all my qualified leads. Maybe I just had a really good conversation with a client, and I want to convert it to an opportunity. So let me pop over to Teams here now, and we'll go here. And I'm basically just going to say at Workbot. And I believe my command is qualified leads. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we'll wait a second for some magic to happen. All right. So Workbot went out to my CRM, and it found 3 leads in the qualified status that were assigned to me. Again, gave me a little form of information. Teams has a very similar kind of ability to create forms, buttons, commands, all that kind of good stuff. They actually did a pretty massive update in the last couple of months. They were falling pretty far behind Slack, in my opinion, but they're really starting to get at parity feature-wise, which is great. We use Teams organizationally, so that was good news to me. And then I have another command set up that I'm basically sending in this form. Called convert to opportunity. So basically I'm just using this to change the status. Maybe I had a really good conversation with this client and I want to flag this as an opportunity and maybe kick off some other workflows. So I can just go ahead and click that button. And it went ahead and did that just to kind of close that up. I'm going to go to the record in QuickBase and you'll see the status was changed to opportunity. So another great example of how I'm in my tool, I'm talking to my sales team, I'm living in Teams. I know some of you sort of live in your IM tools, or you use them quite a bit. And without even opening a web browser, staying in the same exact application, I can just throw a command out to my bot and get what I need. And not only just the information I need, I can take action on it. So a really good example of that. All right. Let's see here. All right, so like I said, Workato has connectivity to literally hundreds of other cloud tools. So by leveraging these, we can create some pretty incredible workflows between our people and our cloud apps. So I'm going to show you a couple more use cases of that.
So Workbot is for Slack and Teams?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just a quick question here. Yeah, Workbot is for Slack and Teams. They have a product for both. So in this scenario, and I'm just going to kind of simulate these a little bit just for the sake of time, because some of these are pretty deep and involve several different systems, and some of them are, it would just take a little too long to demo, but happy to go over with these a little deeper if you have some interest afterwards. But so basically this one is, I'm calling streamlining your sales closing process. So just a high level, we are basically getting our deal approved. It's kind of an expansion of our first use case. We're getting our deal approved, and then we're sending a contract to our customer for signature using a tool called DocuSign. And then we need to do some setup in our financial system, maybe to invoice the client, pay our vendors, those kind of things. And then we need to set up some things in our collaborative tools. That could be Slack, that could be a quick-based project management app, that could be box files, Trello, some combination of all of those. So let's see how that works. So this should look familiar. We're using the bot to get our approval done. Deal's been approved. And then our bot was smart enough to understand, hey, usually when you get deals approved, you need to send a contract to the customer to sign that contract that your manager just approved. So immediately I can have my bot send another command to the user, or another message to the user saying, would you like me to send this off for signature? Here we're using DocuSign. And this is another good example of that human element of the workflow, where I could have automatically sent the contract for signature, but something that important, I maybe want a little check in the middle. So it's a really nice, it's automated, but you're using a human as a trigger to progress the workflow for some final checking there. So we're going to tell the bot, sure, let's send that off to the customer. And then let's say the customer signs, does a digital signature via DocuSign. We could then have the bot send a message to, let's say, the sales or to the finance team. Hey, you got to go set something up over an SAP. So another good example of using a form, which we can associate with our Slack and Teams commands. And maybe this is a situation where we want the finance team, this is really important. Maybe they need to manually type in a GL or account number and maybe send some notes off to the team, something like that. And as soon as they do that, our bot's going to do a bunch of things now in parallel. It's going to go ahead and create a Slack channel for this project. It's going to create a project record in our quick-based project management system so we can start managing the project. It's going to create a folder and box to store our files. And maybe it's going to create a Trello board to do some back and forth with our vendors, let's say. And it can also do things like auto-invite people into the channel there and provide links. Here's the project record, here's the Trello board, here's the box files. So you're just sitting there working and you just received a project and all the necessary stuff you need to kind of run away with it. So some key takeaways here. Quite obviously, you don't have to leave the tool. You can search a system, you can act on things immediately. Really the key takeaway is having 8, 10, 12, 20 cloud tools is okay. That's just the reality we're finding ourselves in. But you shouldn't need to use all of them or log into all of them on a daily basis. And our processes can be automated, but they can also allow for that human workflow and intervention in the middle. We can kind of have our cake and eat it too. And think about this for a second. How much less training do you think it would take for a new employee in one of these processes if the actions they need to take and the information they need to act on is sent directly to them in the form of an instant message? Pretty darn intuitive when you're getting a message that is telling you exactly what you need to do at the time you need to do it. So for our last use case, I like to call this proactive ticketing and maintenance. This is an example of how bots can automate a very complex human-driven workflow with a lot of human interaction. So in this case, this is maybe a retail or kind of brick and mortar scenario. I've got a point of sale machine and it goes down. Big problem. That's kind of the lifeblood of one of those businesses. Has a hardware issue and now I can't take payments from customers. So we're using a tool like Splunk. If some of you are familiar with it, it can do things like log software and hardware editor errors for lots of systems. And then we need to, as soon as that happens, we need to find a technician that's in the area who's capable of fixing it, who can get there today and start working on it. And then the technician might need all sorts of things at his fingertips. He needs to log his time, he needs to get directions, he needs to understand the nature of the ticket, maybe order some tools. He's got a lot of stuff he needs to do too. Let's kind of walk through this a little bit. So point of sale system goes down. We've logged an error in Splunk. And based upon that happening, we've triggered a ticket getting created in our ticketing tool. That could be QuickBase, ServiceNow, Jira. It's probably 800 more other than those. And then as soon as that happens, we're going to then search through our database of technicians, find the guy who's closest to the site, who's available, based on some kind of logic and things like that. And we're going to send him a message that looks something like that, which is really just giving him a toolkit of everything he needs to possibly do while he's on site. So he can hit a map and get directions to the store. He can also give the manager, who's probably sweating right now, his point of sale system's been down for 30 minutes. He gets that peace of mind immediately. The driver says, hey, I'm on my way. And it's like, okay, see, I can calm down a little bit. And then when he gets there, he can say, I've arrived, which could do something like create a timesheet entry. Again, that could be something like T-Sheets or QuickBase or various other tools to manage that kind of stuff. And then let's say he can't fix the issue on the spot. He could communicate with the bot in terms of, hey, I need to order a tool, or I need to schedule a follow-up visit, or maybe bring, I'm not the guy for the job, maybe we need to bring another expert, or I need some help kind of thing. So you can facilitate that back and forth process with the bot. Or let's say he can do his whole job, he's got everything he needs. He can communicate with the bot in terms of updating the ticket back over in our ticketing system. He can basically say, I'm done, and I've completed the job. Maybe we require some inputs in terms of him providing some things for resolution. And he's done. So he basically, we had this very complex workflow involving 7 or 8 different systems, a few different human beings, and we're able to accomplish all of that basically using one tool. So as a recap, I hope that you've at least taken away and learned how automations can take our system integration to the next level. It's really this new wave of integrations. And by combining these automations with bots, we can have immense impacts on our organization, our productivity, and efficiency. How, again? It's really crushing those data silos that those 8+ cloud tools have created, giving everyone a one-stop shop, a one place that they can go to get the information they need and collaborate and act on it. And you can even have the tool send data to them proactively. And the sky is really the limit. Oops, sorry. I lost my slide. There we go. And the sky is really the limit. I've been working at this concept for over 2 years, and I couldn't have done this presentation 2 years ago. It's incredible how fast this wave of technology is moving. And I'm just really excited to see where we'll be a year from now when I'm on this stage. And that is it. So I appreciate everybody listening to me, and I really hope you learned something about the subject and got inspired or something you could add to your organization. Thank you. All right, we got plenty of time. I kind of blew through that, so if there's any questions, I'm happy to field them. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So when the bot posts back, is the bot posting as itself in QuickBase, or is it authenticating the user that clicked the button?
There's several ways to do that. So in most of my examples, I was using what's called a service account. So the actual sending, so the unfortunate part is QuickBase can't catch webhooks. So I had to write a little bit of code when those button commands, the non-Workato approach. When I clicked approve or reject, I'm actually sending a request to a web application that I built that has a QuickBase credential of mine, and it's editing the record on behalf of me. But there are ways to facilitate those workflows to actually self-authenticate into those tools. So if you really needed your manager's name on that, he could hit approve, and if he hasn't kind of authenticated recently, it would actually ask him for his QuickBase credentials. So you can kind of do it either way. That's a little bit more complex. Usually people are doing this with like a, sort of a master user that does all the data writing in QuickBase, but you can kind of have it the other way around as well. Yeah. No, not at all. The first couple examples I showed were just using, we're not dependent on Workato. And then, like I was showing in some of the screenshots, there's some just built-in connectivity into Slack and Teams in general, like putting that Trello board in there and some of those other things, like the Office integration. A lot of that stuff's just built in. Yeah. There is now. When I started working on this presentation, there wasn't. So I went pretty far down the Slack R&D rabbit hole, but Teams, like literally in the last maybe 5-6 weeks, has done some pretty major updates to their platform to the point where, here, let me show you. You can actually build bots directly in Teams if you get the App Studio app. A little more complex, a little more technical heavy, but basically they give you this like step-by-step workflow to basically create bots, or they call them apps. And you can design cards and things like the Slack formatter. So these were things like a long time coming for Teams that literally just came out maybe about a month or so ago. So it wasn't out of lack of functionality. It was really, I had to do a dry run of this about 6 weeks ago, and this functionality barely existed. So, yeah, other question?
8x8 work with QuickBase.
How does 8x8? I'm actually not very, oh, awesome. We've got I think. She was asking how does 8x8 work with QuickBase. I'm not too familiar with 8x8.
It's a phone, VoIP phone service.
Okay.
Instant messaging and video conferencing.
Oh, okay. I imagine there's some probably base functionality just with native Slack and Teams apps where you would just connect your 8x8 account, and then there's probably some basic commands you could do, like, hey, I want to start a call, or things like that. I can kind of click around and queue something like that up, maybe while I'm taking some other questions. Yeah?
The last step of your first use case,
Mm-hmm.
where did you have to paste the code in QuickBase to? I think I missed that.
Yeah. Let me show you here. So into a QuickBase webhook. So here, this contract requires director approval. Basically, this is the endpoint that Slack gives me when I set up my bot initially over in their website. And then this is basically what the block kit builder, or basically that form designer outputs. So that you would copy this, and then you see like I wrote the contract, and then I'm just mapping my QuickBase fields here. So this is a QuickBase field mapping. So that's why it said, the contract demo for breakout session 1 requires your approval. So you basically take the little template they give you and do some mapping in the webhook itself.
So basically what you use to create the conditions.
Oh yeah, they're just up here. Yeah, it's the same as basically doing an email notification. Yeah, so this is how you can kind of control when it gets sent. Is really just doing basically filtering your webhook. Yeah.
So at the bottom there, you were in Slack and it generated all of that JSON for you. Teams doesn't have something similar, or it does?
Yeah, they do. That's what I was showing here in the App Studio. They have a way to basically create cards, and it's a little different kind of setup, but they kind of have a similar like sort of no code, what they call these things. They call these things cards. These guys. They call these cards. So they have sort of their own drag and drop designer for these things, and it's implemented in a very similar way. Yeah. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate the time. Oh, was there someone back there? Oh, never mind. Just stretching. Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I missed one of the questions, so I don't know if this was asked. But the message that went to Slack with the button, is the form that goes with that button what you created within Slack?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I can actually show you.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah, sure. So the Slack block kit builder. Yeah, it's pretty. If you can make a QuickBase form, you can use this for sure. So let's see here. So yeah, if you look for the Slack, it's called the block kit builder. And then usually I'll just start with a template. You can start from scratch, but they have all kinds of templates here. And this one will look kind of familiar. I sort of hacked at it and added some colors and things like that. But let's look at maybe this is the one I showed in the slide. So you can basically say I want to use this template, and it brings it in here. And then I can do things like I can move these. I can't. My mouse is acting a little funny, but I'll just kind of show you. Like I'll add a few things. I can't seem to like drag. Yeah, sorry. I'll just remove a few things, but basically you can kind of drag and drop. I don't know. I can't like drag on this surface. Sorry, it's just highlighting text. But as I build this out, you kind of see this nice intuitive thing where do you want a date picker, do you want a button, et cetera. And then it's basically generating this JSON file for you. And then this is what you would copy and paste into your QuickBase webhook. The other really nice feature here is if I grab the ID of my Slack channel, of really any Slack channel, and I've kind of set up the authentication and stuff. There's this sweet little testing tool where I can just paste the channel ID into the bottom there and say send to Slack, and I can see what that's going to look like, which is really awesome. Slack provides some super developer-friendly tools. It's really great. So you can kind of like, without having to edit anything in QuickBase, you can kind of do some simulations and things like that.
I have another question about that.
Sure.
So when you were in Slack, is there a place where you would specify what field you want some information to go into in QuickBase?
No, that's all done over in the webhook. So if I think I still have that open. So basically, I paste like sort of that raw JSON they gave me, and then I basically do my QuickBase field mappings here in the webhook. So that, the basis by which this, so I have contract name here in the kind of header of my message. That's the basis by which this was able to say demo for breakout session 1, because that was what I named it in QuickBase. So it's a pretty simple kind of field mapping exercise. You really just, for the most part, just put it in these value fields. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
Question I have, with
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, with QuickBooks going over into QuickBase, how do you have to have bots, or what do you do to have that relationship to push back and forth to each other?
There's all sorts of ways to do that. You can use, there's, I think, connected tables for QuickBooks Online. Not too much experience with that. My company, as well as I think a couple other QSPs, have basically productized versions of that integration. Happy to review that with you. And then Workato also has some pretty deep connectivity to QuickBooks Online, at least. Desktop's a little bit of a challenge. You'd probably want to go the custom route for that. But happy to talk to you about that after, if you'd like. Anybody else? Sure. Got a few more minutes.
So I saw that it was posting on a specific channel. Can you direct the messages to a specific user when it's posting to Slack, or to?
You can. So let me look in the kit. That's a little bit more of an advanced use case. Let me look in the kit builder. I don't know if they'll let me test that. Let me think here. But yeah, it's totally possible to do direct messages. It's a little bit easier in Slack. Teams is a little bit of a challenge, because basically Teams creates like a unique conversation ID between you and every person that you speak with. So you can't really send a direct message to somebody. You have to send it into a conversation. And sometimes it's a little hard to get those those unique IDs of those conversations. But it's certainly possible with both to do a direct message to somebody. Absolutely.
Well, you need that functionality if you're looking for an approval process, right?
Sure. I mean, it depends. A lot of organizations we see will do things like, in the context of approval, absolutely. Sort of a poor man's approach to that would be to just make a private channel that only you're in. But you could extend that to be sent directly to a specific user. And then, yeah, for a lot of other use cases, we're seeing people kind of getting used to collaborating in like teams and channels and kind of everything getting posted, so other people have visibility of what's going on. But yeah, that personalized approach is certainly appropriate for some things like approvals specifically.
So if you were posting on a shared channel that had a bunch of people on there, do you just use like have the assigned to field shown in the thing so that everyone on there sees, okay, yes, this is posted to shared channel, but this is actually for so-and-so?
Yeah, and you really, any piece of data, I think I was showing like the assigned to and a couple other things. Yeah, really any field in QuickBase you can post outwardly. So yeah, that would be maybe one way to do it. But in that specific case, I would probably recommend doing a direct message kind of scenario, which is certainly possible.
It would be useful for upper management that doesn't get into QuickBase a lot to do approvals like that. So you could create a single channel, say, for
Yeah.
a manager of an organization, and then anytime that something escalates, you could direct it just into that channel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would they need a QuickBase license, or does it just get privileges or tokens from QuickBase?
Technically, no. Yes.
Charlie, you mentioned that.
I'm right here.
I'm going to talk to you right here.
I'm right here.
So, can you speak to the change management aspect? And for anyone that's implemented Teams and Slacks in your organizations, I'm curious as well. I mean, for an organization looking to adopt this as a one-stop shop, what are some of the barriers, hurdles that you could possibly expect to it? I mean, some applications can get very complex. You need a lot of interaction in that.
Mhm.
Is it necessarily a one-stop shop going into one of these? Whereas, is this just another place to interact?
We've seen all different flavors of that, and I mean, I think you bring up a great point. I mean, we've seen some organizations where they literally don't leave this browser tab. That usually the more typical scenarios, you pick off these things that are business critical or really painful, or maybe dropping the ball, inefficient. So you're kind of getting those wins, and then maybe assessing at that point. Maybe it's okay to go into QuickBase or Salesforce, what have you, for all these other things. I think it's really a matter of preference. And I mean, it maybe is a little bit of a pipe dream for absolutely everything to happen in here. But I think it's more of a, what's really important to you, what needs to be kind of streamlined, efficient, transparent, that kind of thing. And then, but yeah, there's, some tools are great at what they do, and then there are probably things in here you would probably be better to do in a QuickBase or, things like that. So, like I wouldn't be able to upload like a 7 terabyte file into a Slack message and expect it to go to like Amazon Glacier or something like that. So, absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody.